This is the Virtual Happy Hour Experience. I am your host, Rob. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. We have brilliant interviews almost weekly. When we don't, we talk about how to host a virtual event, why the importance of virtual events, and another discussion coming up, hybrid events. So make sure to smash the like, share this content, hit the notification bell to all when you subscribe. And for today, we are going to be talking about finding freedom from within. He's a great friend of mine, a huge overcomer of adversity. He is an LGBTQ advocate. He is an attorney. He's a C-suite executive. He's a former high-level Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, podcast host, business coach, Scott Mason. It's always a pleasure. Welcome back, brother.
I love having you here. I love having someone whose energy perhaps even exceeds my own. How is that even possible?
I don't know if that's possible, but I do want to say cheers to that and happy hour, ladies and gentlemen. It is a happy hour. Crack a drink. Sit back and enjoy this. I'm not sure if you have anything in your hand, Scott. Do you? It may be a little early for you. What do you have, my friend? Coffee.
I have coffee, but I have a little something in it.
I love coffee. So this is Il Falcone. This is from Castel di Monte. This is in the central part of Puglia, or the north central part of Puglia. Castel di Monte is a octagonal castle, and around it's a pile of vineyards. And this is one of the great homes of Nero di Troia, which is a native grape to Apulia, or Puglia in the southern Italy, which is, I believe, the least mountainous region in Italy. It's also very hot and dry. It forms the boot in the heel of Italy in southern Italy. It's sort of a boot that forms like this. I'm going to bring that map up for a second. Why the heck not? So let's just take a look at it. This gives you an idea of what goes on in the world of wine. And you can see on the wine map what this is in Italy. So just trying to get a refined map here, my friend. Maps, if you are a wine specialist, you have to love maps. So I'm going to go to Wine Folly here. We're just going to get back to where we are. There we are. It's always fun trying to share things on this platform. The cool thing is we are able to. So here we are, Scott. I'm going to bring this right up. And there we are. So this is just taking a moment to load. I have no idea why, but there we go. So Puglia is just right down here in the southern boot. Castel di Monte is up in this area. I'm going to see if I can just go back to that tab. We're going to expand it. And there is just so much going on in this brilliant wine producing region. Oddly enough, most of it is rosé production. Can you see how it forms the heel of Italy's boot? Because this part's out. Then you have Sicily, and Sardinia comes up over here. So Italy, such a fascinating wine-producing region. I'm going to stop sharing that. Big shout-out to Wine Folly. But this is a Reserva, so it's aged at least 2 years. 1 year in oak, 1 year in bottle. These are full-bodied wines. This is a blend. I believe it has to be at least 65% Nero di Troia, with a blend, I hope I got that right, with a blend of either Montepulciano or Sangiovese or other red grapes. This is a Rosso Reserva. It is, in fact, 70% Nero di Troia, and it has Montepulciano makes up the balance of it. Oh, wow. So you just get some amazing notes here. There's like pencil box, a bit of tobacco, lots of jamminess, rich red cherry, dark fruit all over the place, spice all over the place. Yeah, just hints of underbellies of nutmeg in here. And this one's from 2015. It's nice and dry. Packs a bit of an acidic punch to it, particularly from southern Italy, a bit of jamminess. This would be great with like Napoli-style pepperoni or a meat-style pizza with a Rosso or red sauce. I would love it with that. That'd be one of my recommendations. 2015, so that's also a very good vintage year. You'll also note when it's a DOCG wine, which is at the top of the appellation or their appellation system of categorizing wines, It's got a gold seal and serial numbers around. It's a gold faceta, and this denotes the wine's authenticity. And that's the way that, the consortio, which controls the actual area, and the disciplinary, which is all the rules and the sets and the laws that govern each region, protect. So lots of interesting things there. I hope I didn't bore you with a bit of wine stuff before we started. Happy hour, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers to everybody again. And of course, we talk about this in our virtual and hybrid tastings with The Drunken Grape. If you're interested, reach out to me at rob@thedrunkengrape.com, or you can hit me up at info@thedrunkengrape.com, or my website, thedrunkengrape.com. It's really simple. Social media too. I'm all over the place. So getting back to you, enough about me. Scott, what got you into the world of coaching, and what got you into really finding and helping people find freedom from within? Because I think this is a crucial topic today.
Thank you. And it really is. This is my fourth career. For too long, close to a quarter of a century, I worked as an attorney and as an executive in a couple of C-suite positions, as you mentioned earlier, and was miserable. I had everything that seemed like it should be wonderful and that anyone would aspire to. Big office, nice title, all sorts of power and authority, and certainly great salaries. But I felt trapped and miserable inside. And I realized that what I had done was create a prison, a Tartarus or a Hades of my own making. It was a Tartarus or an underworld that so many people that I knew were living in. And I became determined to figure out, once I broke out and moved into a space where I was truly living out my internal freedom, of using the skills that I learned along the way to help pull people along and escape and find that light of their own.
Wow. And that is so needed. I mean, you, in our last episode, we talked about this, you triumphing over adversity.
Yeah.
Your whole life was triumphing over adversity. I believe you're adopted, biracial or multiracial.
Yep.
Mother was Trinidadian, the father English, or was it the other way around?
It was the other way around, but I'm blown away by your memory. That's an amazing recall, man.
You grew up in a Baptist town just outside of Kansas City.
Yeah.
They preached against homosexuality and the LGBTQ community that you're very much part of.
Yeah.
And how did you get out of that?
A lot of it was at first driven by a desire to prove that I could be something other than what was expected of me. My mother worked for a dog food factory. My father worked for the Highway Patrol. They were African American in a community where that was not a group that was treated very well. Look, I had a high school debate teacher say to the entire class about me, you can teach a monkey how to talk, but you can't teach him how to think. And so racism was rampant. And like you said, there was a lot of homophobia, as well as then coming from a social class background where expectations were nominal. I was determined to prove that I could be something more. And so I worked my you-know-what off to prove that I would be worthy of first leaving the state to go to college and then ultimately coming to New York City, where I live now, to go to law school. Over time, of course, that matured, and I would say, unfortunately, hardened into a desire to achieve social status based on the expectations of others, or based on what I felt I needed to prove in order to distance myself from the humble backgrounds and humble expectations that I had. So I had the drive to overcome these obstacles, but it was fundamentally based in something that was reactive and negative, rather than driven by forces from within. And part of what ultimately turned me into the person that I am now and gave me that additional oomph to want to be there and actually built my resilience was having that transformation.
Wow. And to overcome that level of adversity, you got to remember, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, into the 90s. Things got better in the 90s,
yes.
But I can tell you in the 80s, one of the worst things they could do to typecast you was to try to play or create a rumor you were gay or somebody was gay, and they would demonize it.
Yeah.
And there was definitely racism. Even here in Canada, there was racism, not to the same extent in a lot of ways as the state, but racism existed.
Yeah.
I saw it, I saw it firsthand. And homophobia was definitely a huge problem.
Totally.
I mean, and for you to come out of a community that's ultra conservative, parents came from very simple means.
Yeah.
You came from the most humble of humblest and most difficult of backgrounds.
Yes.
To do what you did is truly remarkable.
Thank you.
Become an attorney, a C-suite executive, a business owner, a guiding light for people in humanity in a city that, hey, Sinatra says it right. If I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. And, incredible. So how do you guide people through? Just go through a very general, without revealing much of your coaching tactics, because obviously this is a highly sought after and paid for service. Mm-hmm. How do you guide people through it? I know you love to compare things to mythology. You love to talk about references to mythology because the pantheon of the Greeks and then the Romans, of course, stole their pantheon of gods. It was really about showing the vulnerable nature of the gods that reflected, in a lot of ways, the mortality and the vulnerability and imperfection of humans.
Absolutely. Those gods are representations of who we are. The stories are universal testaments to the human experience and guideposts for us as we go on our journeys. Rob, before I say anything, I have to say one thing that always blows me away about you and why this show is so great to listen to over and over again. It's the breadth of your knowledge about so many topics, as you just demonstrated right now. So I just had to get that out.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Well, hope we can build up the subscription rate. I mean, it's like anything. It seems like it can be pulling teeth, as you know, with YouTube. If it's not a fad, but if it's real, it's. But I believe we're going to win in the end anyway.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Keep building, keep growing, keep working on it.
Yeah, you're simply too substantive for that not to happen.
Thanks, brother. But no, just I want to share with the audience your profile. I think it's always a good thing to do, too. Scott's prolific on LinkedIn, ladies and gentlemen. This is perhaps the best place to find him. If you do not have a subscription to LinkedIn, I highly recommend you do. As far as business networking, it is an amazing platform. That's a bit of a push for the LinkedIn fans out there. I think that and YouTube are great platforms, really to build your business and expand upon it. I'm not really a firm believer in Instagram or Twitter. It just hasn't worked for me, but it does work for others. I mean, if you're into visual stuff, you're into cosmetics, hair, beauty, fitness, Instagram, you're a very good-looking woman. Instagram's a fantastic platform, but for what we're doing, I think this is the proper one. And here you are, Scott Mason.
Yes.
The Myth Slayer, transformational coach for executives, entrepreneurs, and other leaders. And I really think your life speaks of discipline.
Thank you. I love it.
How did you get there? Again, how did you get there? Were your parents disciplined when you grew up? Were they very structured?
Oh, Rob. My father had been in the military. Yes. Disciplined. I was never allowed to have a shower that took more than 3 minutes. And in fact, to this day, I am in and out of that shower within 3 minutes. I don't even know how to be in the shower. And, there were room inspections, and they would lift up the mattress to make sure there wasn't dust underneath, lift up random books to make sure I dusted under the books. And I was a runner when I was in high school, and my dad would run with me, and he made sure I finished what I started. And they made sure that we finished our homework. As much as I wanted to get out of Kansas, those practices of discipline were essential. And by the way, it's one of the key elements of participating in a successful coaching program, whether it's mine or anyone. In my case, there is a lot of homework that's assigned. There's a lot of deep thinking. There's a lot of activity and follow-up that needs to occur. For the transformation to truly be meaningful, discipline has to be there. And if discipline isn't there, one of the things that needs to be worked on with the client is developing that discipline so they can really live the dream that they want to.
Yeah, because without discipline, you have nothing. Steve Harvey talks about this.
What doesn't he talk about, by the way? I have no doubt. I mean, look at his success. He's got a quip for everything. I love it.
Yeah, you're talking about a man who lived in his car for 3 years.
Yeah. And look,
how few people have that fortitude?
Well, look at you and what has brought your success, among other things. Your background in martial arts and judo. Martial arts, as we both know, having practiced it. Discipline is everything. And if you don't have it walking in the door, you learn it pretty fast unless you like getting submitted every day, all the time.
Yeah, it's true. It was one facet. I mean, what really helped me really round out and evolve finally was probably going to the cruise line industry. It was definitely joining the cruise line industry in my, the second half of my 20s, 26 all the way into really 34, 35, almost to the tip of 35. I was involved in it, except for a hiatus for about 2 years or almost 2 years where I worked for a telecom company. But hardship, and that's hard. That's a hard environment. If you have problems, you can't run anywhere.
Yeah, I can imagine.
If you say anything negative about somebody, it's in your face in 2 seconds. So you learn pretty quickly not to do that. It's better just to solve problems. It's better to stay disciplined, focused, and punctual and just do your job, barrel down. There's tons of fun to be had there, or at least there was. But anything that requires the rigors of discipline does make you stronger. And I wasn't a fan of discipline when I was a kid. I grew up in a military household too. I found my father at times could be overbearing. And really, he was just trying to make the best of me. And then that came out later. But it's, he's also the one that inspired me to go into this field of wine, spirits, and beer in the end, because he used to make it at home. So home life is a huge thing. I mean, how do you work with somebody who comes from a broken past in the first place? That's probably your greatest challenge, is it not?
Yeah, but it's also the greatest opportunity, because once that is acknowledged by the client, they are often tremendously incentivized to move beyond it, and I can empathize with them because of the challenges that I faced growing up. That goes back to your earlier question about what is the process that my coaching program has for working people through a transformation, and answering that high level, because this works particularly effectively with those that are coming from broken past. We start by, number one, examining the myths that they are telling themselves and that are governing their lives and their outcomes, as well as the roles that they are playing in those myths, so that even if the myth that they have constructed about their life is neutral, if they're playing a toxic role, it ultimately turns sour. Once we understand what myths they are playing, we shut the book on the myths that they have that are toxic and work to go to the inner oracle, uncover who they really are, what their true values are, what their purpose is, and what they can compromise and will not compromise. And from there, we begin to build a vision for their future. Once they are connected with a vision for a future that's uniquely tied to who and what they are meant to be on this planet, you see charisma come within, and we work to build that charisma out, because it ultimately magnetizes the opportunities that you need in order to fully live out your life and to build a sustainable career or future or whatever it looks like for you with this new vision. Then finally, we work to build an actual work plan that is realistic, that is metric-based, and that ties where they are now to where they want to be. And when we finish that, I have them stand up to the world and declare that they are on the way to professional freedom, and they find power that way. That's where their inner freedom really externalizes.
That's awesome. It's, there's so many things to distract people. Video games, if you're too obsessed with them, social media, the media is really my girlfriend and I started watching The Terminal List.
I haven't seen it.
That's a cool series on Prime. Chris Pratt directs it. It's based on books. There's a couple other famous actors in it. But it's really hits how media manipulates all the facts. In this one, it's about, a SEAL team, and the duty goes wrong, and somebody now trying to kill him, and his family dies, they get executed, and, he's suffering through PTSD, and you got the reporters paying for details and information. I love how you do this, because a lot of that really conflicts and confuses people. It's like turning on to the Instagram model that's all airbrushed and the girl doesn't even look remotely like that. Or the swimsuit bikini model on a cover of a magazine doesn't even remotely look like that. And this is what people are sold. They're sold false myths. I'll use the term myths because I think you nail it. And to really break those myths down, to help people find personal and professional freedom, is huge. I mean, would you not agree that the last place where we're really not free is the workplace in many cases?
Oh,
in a democracy, there's no democracy in a workplace.
I agree.
It's the most archaic institution.
Yeah. And, in some cases, there is reason for that. For instance, if you're in the military and in the middle of a war, we don't want to be having a vote about tactics. A democracy is inappropriate. And even in some workplaces that are large and hierarchical, where there's a specific mission, not every voice is necessarily equal, because not all knowledge or skill sets are equally distributed throughout the organization. That being said, humanity as one of the core elements of democracy as we know it throughout the Western world is absent in too many workplaces. And so you end up with workplaces that are either anti-human, both in terms of how they treat their culture, or they're anti-human in terms of how they interface with the larger world. And you see that with a lot of the political donations that they might make, or the way that they exercise the authority that their financial position brings them into the world. And so the lack of humanity, both within and without, ultimately does trickle down and impact the psyche of everyone working there. And they can feel trapped. And again, I speak to that having felt it myself. You can feel so trapped, you don't even know who you are anymore, or you don't believe you have anything special to offer. You might not even remember your gifts. You might not even think you have talents, or that you could make it on your own or somewhere besides where you are. And that's taking in a certain dehumanization that goes right against everything that makes us at our core independent, autonomous, feeling and striving human beings. Ultimately, we all deserve better than that.
I mean, whoever created us, or creation itself, the biggest human trait is the power of free will.
Yes.
And yet so many just surrender that blindly. I will plainly use the word sheep or sheeple, because people do go into that pattern. But the beauty of it is they don't have to.
Yes.
They can exercise what they want to do. I look at another guy, for instance, on LinkedIn, Kurt Mercadante. He's a good friend of mine. I haven't spoken to him in a while. He's a decent dude. He does a lot of coaching. He's quite a conservative fellow, but he broke away from the norm. During the pandemic, he sold his house in Charleston, went across a tour of the States. Now I believe he's in Sedona, Arizona, and he kind of lives out there. He hikes through the desert and the mountains. He's in great shape. And he brings men onto retreats to focus on them. And we're talking about a guy who also walked away from a 7-digit ad agency or PR agency beforehand. Probably, I guarantee he had a thriving coaching business getting near there, and just decided to do this personal journey because he's a lot happier. And that, to me, is a sign of self-actualization. You remember Maslow's theories of needs,
very much so.
The pyramid? How do we get everyone to be self-actualized? And I think that's the growing question of the 21st century. It's like the democratization of finance through cryptocurrencies that's shaking the world. We talked about this in a couple of my episodes, like Web3, NFTs, crypto, decentralized banking. Yes, it's taken a beating, but it'll come roaring back. I mean, this technology is permanently here to stay. Why don't we work on democratizing all of our lives? And that means, in a lot of ways, probably laying massive legal beatdowns on politicians that have been so corrupt for so long, and the infrastructure and the architecture behind that machine. But you could have to start with you, don't you? Can't do anything without that.
Then once you understand who and what you are, what your own self-actualizing possibilities are, and I frame it as declaring yourself as an Olympian, because it also involves understanding something that the Olympian gods understood, which is that they deserve the tribute and respect of the mortals. And if they did not get it, mortals were punished. If you can come into the mindset of an Olympian, then the expectations that we as individual voters bring into the democratic institutions that we participate in, or that we bring into the act of participating, which too many people don't do right now anyway, then perhaps there is an opportunity for things to change. In addition to the political sphere, what you talk about and what you're mentioning a little bit earlier about the relationship of individuals to their workplaces, and workplace as a place that imprisons people, not just gives them wage in exchange for work, but literally mentally imprisons them. Expectations that people have around what they will tolerate within work can fundamentally transform. Now, we've seen some of that due to the Great Resignation, but my personal theory is that absent some significant rejiggering of the human expectations about freedom as a cultural matter, that's going to fade away, and it could come back even worse. So we need to be focusing individually and as a culture on developing our possibilities with regard to self-actualization in order to make things that balance out the equations that we live in that could either take away or add to our freedom a little bit more evenly played.
Yeah, and the free societies do the best. I mean, part of the whole gem behind Scandinavian nations, if you go back into their Viking past, women naturally and everybody in the community naturally played integral and important roles. And society never let go of that grip. You know, and we come over here, there's a lot of expectations. There was expectations. I mean, if you go back into the 50s, and it feels like with Roe versus Wade, we just tripped back into the 1950s. But it's like women, for instance, had an expectation to just stay at home and raise children. But that's not what all women wanted to do. You had men that were forced to always be the breadwinner, but that's not what all men want to do. And it's really about freeing these self-limiting beliefs because, I mean, I look at myself. In order to move forward, I'm constantly smashing self-limiting beliefs. We're conditioned to believe it.
When we understand that these beliefs are just myths that can be rewritten, we have unlocked power beyond what we can imagine. When we talk about toxic roles in my coaching practice, I look to the Greek myths because there are certain villainous or toxic types that appear in these stories over and over. But there are also positive ones. The three key positive ones are author, hero, and Olympian. I'll talk about them all very briefly. A hero is a transitional role. It is when you have begun to throw behind your limitations and go on a journey that ends towards your Olympian destination. The Olympian is the goal, the person who has found freedom, who is in touch with their creativity, and like we mentioned earlier, to demanding the appropriate tribute from the world that they deserve. But the other most foundational role of all is the author. The author, the one who is writing the myth. The hero could sit and live their lives playing some toxic, boring backstreet role, but they make a choice to behave in a way that defies convention, that is risky, and that opens the door to change. In other words, and they do it, and they did it knowing full well, in fact, hoping that when they were done being heroes, an epic would be written about them, an epic that they controlled by controlling their own actions. They were taking on the role of an author. I ask that everyone listening to this or watching this remember authorship of your role is truly your ultimate source of power.
Wow. And we're going to end it on that. You know, this is a great point to end the show. As Mahatma Gandhi always wisely said, be the change you want to be. And this is directly what you are reflecting upon. Always a pleasure, my friend.
It's a gift having you in my life.
Always a pleasure to have you on the virtual happy hour experience. Likewise, my friend, I'm so happy we crossed paths. Shows you the power of social media. Scott and I met on LinkedIn. Ladies and gentlemen, again, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell to all when you do, to not miss any great content. Share this, invite your friends to follow and watch the virtual happy hour experience playlist on the Drunken Great YouTube channel. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, whatever you decide to do, have a terrific day. This is Rob and Scott from the Drunken Great.